So the O became a C. So it was C, and then for Lord, the L somehow became a G from the roll of dice. So I had C, G. Oh, I had the perfect fifth. I'm right there with a lot of the early music, right? The power of the perfect fifth. Then back to O for Lord, C, G, C. And then rolling the dice, I determined that R was going to be a B and D was going to be an A. C, G, C, B, A. Well, that would only give me white notes, so then I decided intuitively to just throw in accidentals whenever I felt like it. And the text of Psalm 6 is pretty angst-ridden. I had a very happy childhood, so maybe I channel whatever angst I had into my music. And I always loved angsty music, and the weirder the better. What can I say? So intuitive usage of accidentals. The rhythms, I decided that every word was going to be a measure of 4/4, but I was also going to acknowledge the punctuation of passing vehicles, so that the O was a whole note, and then the Lord had a comma after it, so that would be a quintuplet with 4 quarter notes and a quarter rest. I recorded it, as you'll see, down in Half Moon Bay. It was years later. It was when I was teaching at DVC. The scenery is so much more interesting than me, don't you think? Here comes the car. There was road construction where I really wanted to walk today, so I've leapfrogged a little bit ahead. I'm on Seavers Road, heading towards Pedrick Produce, and ultimately heading towards Davis from Dixon. Oh yes, and I recorded it in Nature Zone years later. It was in the time of being at DVC, and I've always thought it was kind of a destitute piece. It's very atonal. This was before I had discovered minimalism, but I knew a lot of other tricks of the trade, as we'll see. And of course, rule-based and yet somehow random. I think it connects with the existentialism of people like Sartre and even Samuel Beckett. I was going to say something about Beckett at the beginning. Oh, yes, the transitory nature of life. This from Waiting for Godot. Pozzo, towards the end, they give birth astride a grave. The light gleams for an instant, and it's dark once more. So that's what I'm doing in my instant. Recording the piece, years later, I'm at DVC. At one point, DVC gave us all a pay cut. Man, I was ticked. I was ready to resign. But just before that, I had discovered the wonders of the music lab, and I started recording my complete works, and I'm still doing that, I guess, the present day, although mostly at home now. Oh, I realized, Mark, you didn't get a pay cut, you got a pay raise, because going to a professional recording studio would be quite something. So I believe I recorded this Opus 1 in 2004, something like that. But in 2007, I discovered the wonders of video, specifically the Macs. Now a MacBook Pro, I had originally a MacBook, but they all had the free iMovie program, free at the time, loaded in. So at that point, I went down to Half Moon Bay. The cliffs there were the closest to a desert, and I've always thought this was kind of a destitute, deserty piece. So I recorded on the beach, and as you might notice, the earbuds on, because I'm actually performing and listening to the recording that I did in the lab and making appropriate gestures. Truth to tell, it was howling wind on the beach, and one never would have heard me whatsoever. I guess we could keep talking now for a little bit. Not back to the car yet. This is my Opus 8. By this point, I'm in college at Swarthmore College. And I was on a committee, a student advisory committee, interviewing and putting our input on the prospect of hiring to music faculty. And one of the people we interviewed who did not accept the job, he wound up going to Yale. And he's passed away by now, rest his soul, and that would be Jonathan Kramer. Did a wonderful music appreciation-like book before he passed this mortal coil. Somebody just stopped. That's always alarming. But at any rate, all the drama. One of my colleagues, Stephen Schwartz, with whom I actually did a collaborative piece at one point. Probably won't play that one. He asked the same question. He said, suppose if you had a young composer who was running out of ideas, who just, was at a blank spot, dry period. And Jonathan said, well, if I had a student like that, maybe I'd say, okay, why don't you do a piece in 12 parts? And the first part would have one note in it, one pitch class. And the second would have two pitch classes, and the third section would have three. And I thought, what a good idea. So I went one beyond that. Ultimately, we hired Jerry Levison and Joan Panetti, two fantastic teachers, both of whom have influenced me. So ultimately, I wound up maybe one better in terms of not 12 sections of a piece, but a 12-movement piece called The 12 Fingers. And you guessed it, first one starts with one note. They're all F sharps. Second one is F sharps and F naturals, although I think I respelled it as G flats. Look at that, found music, great. We'll get to a little bit of rap, not that I know that much. And then the third pitch was B. I think I respelled it E sharp, F sharp, and B. And so it went, very intuitively, multi-stylistic. By this point, of course, I was big on George Crumb and other eclectic composers, Edward London, and so on and so forth. And so the 12-finger suite, kind of a compendium of the big piano piece of what I had learned to that point. And we'll just modestly, focus on movement 8, which is my Mozart parody, which is, there they go. They don't know they're going to be in serious follow me car, stop with a flagman situation. It's fun. I'm supposed to be walking today, but I'm not doing it. It's Mozart parody, and we've got an A theme, which is just a B major scale, a B theme in the dominant. It's an F sharp major. It's, kind of a minimalist jazz thing. I really hadn't discovered minimalism at this point. Has aspects thereof. The development combining both of those themes. It's still more interesting over here, don't you think? By this point, I have 8 pitches, and so I have a B major scale. I don't have perfect pitch, but sometimes I have perfect mark pitch. So B major in this case, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So I've got 7 notes there, and so what about the 8th note? It's do, re, mi, fa, fi. I've got the fi in there too. So that gives me an opportunity for 2 different half-step dissonances and mistakes. And indeed, for the second theme, oh, look at this. They're busy today. Second theme having these kind of like Pavlovian bonks. So you get the music and then bloop, and then the music and bloop. So we kind of get this accustomed thing. Yeah, and then development, I'm minor with the first theme, and I have the second theme soaring on top. That's that kind of Copland fast, slow, although in reverse. Bach too. Johann Sebastian thereof. And then when the 2 themes come back, they're wondering what I'm doing. We've got first theme in the subdominant on the 4-chord, 4 tonality, which is sort of like Mozart in the big C major Köchel 4-5-4 sonata. And I was definitely thinking that. And then the second theme back in the tonic. And then we got the Pavlov's dog. We expect the bloomps, and we don't get the bloomps. And instead of getting the bloomps, I could just well go this way. Then you can see the scenery back there. Instead of the blooms, we get silence. And so it's like, we're expecting that. Drop the other ball, so drop the other hat, drop the other shoe. So the deal is then, notice when I'm in front of the house, sometimes I let the cars go by, but impossible here, right? Although the follow me people back there have been holding up some of the traffic, which is kind of cool. So at any rate, the coda is a little second development, not really. I hadn't really developed that Beethoven realization yet about codas being second developments. But then you get the bonks. And this is back in the age of analog technology, so we were still all listening to records, and it was everybody's experience back then, that eventually you'd have records that would skip, that would skip, that would skip, that would be early minimalism. Matter of fact, Charles Armacani in the lexical piece, I think at the end, it's just a piece called Bang, and it's just bang, bang, bang. Don't quote me on that. So then you get the stuck record effect, and then finally a final dissonance. And the dissonances are always just clusters of, I think, E sharps and F sharps, and then A sharps and Bs, because those are the regions where I have primarily the seconds. Okay, I could have had the E natural and the E sharp, could have respelled that F flat, but I didn't do that. And that gets us up to, because we're going to skip everything else, but we're going to get to one of my operas, which is our main feature piece. Oh, and in a sense, in these early pieces, I'm taking pre-existing influences and arguably I'm collaging, and there will be something else that I'll do later. And maybe I only have 2 artistic periods rather than 3.